Visiting the demilitarized zone, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis arrives at a tense area on the Korean Peninsula. The JFK Files, an inside look at the release of documents connected to the assassination of our only Catholic president. Rain for Dreamers, Pope Francis speaks to young immigrants who could be impacted by the DACA program ending. And cheers for Sister Margaret Ann, the unique way she's being honored after going viral in the wake of Hurricane Irma. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, October 27, 2017.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. We begin tonight with an exclusive interview with the Trump official who tried and failed to stop a detained immigrant from getting an abortion. Correspondent Jason Calvi joins us now with an interview you'll see first on EWTN News Nightly. Jason?
Wyatt, Democrats on Capitol Hill blasted Scott Lloyd for his handling of this abortion controversy. Lloyd is the director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. They're responsible for taking care of detained kids who cross the border illegally. Here, let's listen to yesterday's hearing.
Have you ever contacted any anonymous young girl in your care trying to talk her out of having an abortion?
I'm out in the field in many of our locations, and I meet with, dozens and even perhaps hundreds of the people who we serve, the populations we serve, and so among them, I'm certain that some of them were pregnant at the time.
I'm disturbed that you won't answer the question.
Joining me now is that man, Scott Lloyd. I know you say you can't talk about the specifics of this case, but how do you feel having lost?
Well, we had some important principles to defend in court, and we would have liked to see it go our way, certainly. But as with any of these cases, they involve real people, and we have to keep them in mind and keep them in our prayers.
The real people, I'm just wondering, are there many cases of these unaccompanied minors who cross the border illegally? Are many of them pregnant?
It's actually a tiny minority of the folks in our population. At any time we could have up to several thousand, and
several thousand young women or
young of both sexes in our shelters, but yeah, it's only a tiny minority at any one time that come across pregnant.
And I know the ACLU says you tried to convince one girl not to have an abortion. Are there circumstances where you, as the custodian of these children, would try to convince them to choose life?
Well, as I was saying a moment ago, there are people involved, and I take that responsibility very seriously, and I want to make sure that the kids in our care have everything that they need, and they know that they have everything that they need. And if it's necessary for me to deliver that message in person, that's fine. And in fact, I've met with dozens and perhaps hundreds of the kids in our care to know that there's a real person on the other end who's really looking out for their best interests. So
you have asked them to possibly consider choosing life as opposed to abortion?
I've presented options to a few folks who are pregnant, and I wanted them to know that we were there to help them with their situation, and we wanted them to know as fully as they could what was available to them. I
know you personally have written about your pro-life views in the National Catholic Register. You used to work for the Knights of Columbus. You're a Catholic father of 6.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the law of the land is that abortion is the law of the land. I know the HHS, that's the department that you fall under, their draft strategic plan says that life begins at conception. So how do you balance the law of the land and these pro-life views as well?
Well, the law from its inception in 1973, such as it is the law, has always been controversial and has been subject to dramatic pushback from the beginning, and it's been sustained up until this day. And so, to the extent that it's possible, wherever it's possible, we need to do everything that we can to protect the dignity of human life from conception to natural death.
I know it's been a very difficult week. I imagine it's been a difficult week for you. Have you considered stepping aside and going back to work maybe for the Knights of Columbus or another organization?
No.
Why not?
When the going gets tough, the tough keep going, I guess. So, I think there sometimes the noise that might be generated over one case or another can be a distraction, and I think it's best to just keep your head down and keep doing the work that you're doing. So,
Scott Lloyd, thank you very much, the Director of the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Wyatt, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, correspondent Jason Calby. Thanks for that exclusive first interview here on EWTN News Nightly. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops called Jane Doe's abortion absolutely tragic. The USCCB statement says, in part, a court forced government agents to help end the life of an innocent unborn child. No one should be forced to facilitate the evil of abortion. The bishops of the United States will fight to ensure this does not become a legal precedent. He was America's first Catholic president, and his assassination shocked the world. Now, more than 50 years later, President Trump authorizes the release of secret files related to the death of President John F. Kennedy. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. After much anticipation, more than 2,800 files were released yesterday to the public, but at the urging of the CIA and the FBI, the disclosure of hundreds more files have been blocked, at least for now.
President Trump tweeting this morning, JFK files are being carefully released. In the end, there will be great transparency. It is my hope to get just about everything to public. The documents capture the frantic days after the assassination, when federal agents madly chased after tips, juggled rumors, and followed leads worldwide. One memo says a British newspaper received an anonymous call about big news in the United States 25 minutes before Kennedy was shot in Dallas. The files could take weeks to sift through, but not all of them were released. Hugh Ainsworth, a journalist and witness to Kennedy's assassination, says the CIA and FBI have a lot of reasons for wanting to keep some files secret.
Gosh knows how many people our government tried to kill or did kill during that period of time. And that's why they're afraid of releasing this, because it will hurt. It will hurt the CIA particularly, and to some extent, I think it'll hurt the FBI.
Intelligence agencies pressured Trump to keep some information secret, and the president agrees it's best. I have no choice today but to accept those redactions rather than allow potentially irreversible harm to our nation's security. Federal agencies now have 5 months to explain why the remaining documents should be kept from public view. The president will review their case and make a decision about what should be disclosed. Secret Service agent Clint Hill, who jumped on Kennedy's car after he was shot, says the withholding of information all these years later is very suspect.
The more material they hold back, the more suspicious people become that there's hiding something. And I don't think they need to do that. I think that every bit of information they have should be released.
The released documents also contain reports stamped secret that reveal the suspicions of the error around Cubans and communists. They cast a wide net over varied activities of the Kennedy administration, like its efforts to upend Fidel Castro's government in Cuba.
Correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. A Senate panel approves President Trump's pick to be Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. Sam Brownback, the Republican governor from Kansas, is approved by an 11-10 vote. Brownback now goes to the full Senate for confirmation. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis visits the area between North and South Korea. He tells American and South Korean troops diplomacy, not war, is the answer to the ongoing nuclear crisis.
Our goal is not war, but rather the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Mattis adds diplomats must be backed by a strong military, so they speak from a position of strength. North Korea has accelerated its nuclear program since President Trump took office. Iraq's prime minister issues a 24-hour halt of all troop movement in or around the Kurdish region of the country. This follows efforts by Iraqi troops who are trying to bring the territory held by Kurdish forces back under federal control. The prime minister said the order was given to prevent clashes between the, quote, sons of one nation. Escalating tensions between Erbil and Baghdad erupted in violence earlier this month following a controversial referendum on independence held by the Kurds in September. Catalonia's regional parliament votes to declare independence from Spain. The Spanish government is responding, adopting special constitutional powers to stop the move. The independence vote draws celebrations in parts of Catalonia, but Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy calls the attempted secession a criminal act. The U.S. and other countries support Catalonia remaining part of Spain. A repeat presidential election in Kenya is postponed for a second time. The move comes amid fears of another wave of violence. The opposition boycotted the initial voting on Thursday, then when clashed with police in several areas. Opposition supporters say there will be more violence if polling stations open this weekend. The results of the original election were overturned by a judge last month. A newly released United Nations investigation is pointing the finger at the Syrian government for a deadly sarin gas attack last April. A warning: these next images may be hard to see. In the report, the UN panel concludes it's confident Bashar al-Assad's regime was behind the attack on a rebel-held village that killed dozens of civilians. Syria has consistently denied it. International travelers to the U.S. are facing new security screenings. The new procedure started yesterday for all passengers on U.S.-bound flights. Flyers will be questioned about their trip and luggage. With the new measures, travelers could also face more detailed inspection of their electronic devices. Pope Francis tells young immigrants to keep dreaming and to seek out people who love them and want to defend them. The Holy Father spoke to young people in Texas, Puerto Rico, and several Latin American nations who could be affected by President Donald Trump's decision to end the DACA, a program protecting minors from deportation. Pope Francis, who was attending a meeting in Rome, told the group, "I am praying for you." Hundreds of high-level church officials and European political leaders are meeting at the Vatican to reflect on the challenges the European Union faces.
The number of believers goes up continually. But that, of course, brings with it great responsibility for believers. And therefore, I think we do have to take that responsibility very seriously.
Speaking to journalists earlier today in Rome, Archbishop Paul Gallagher, the Vatican's Secretary for Relations with States, emphasized the importance of the Church's contribution to helping Europe face its challenges. Juliet Lindley is EWTN News Nightly's Vatican correspondent. She joins us now for more on this from Rome. Juliet, what are the main challenges the European Union currently faces?
While it's been 60 years since the Treaty of Rome was signed, a treaty that created the precursor community to what is today the European Union. And with that treaty came peace and stability, growth and progress within the European countries. And it brought prosperity to post-war Europe. But today, 60 years on, as Cardinal Reinhard Marx told journalists today, the European Union is facing serious problems, and they range from climate change to nationalism to high youth unemployment and, of course, the migrant and refugee crisis. So the Church would like to play a role in creating a dialogue to help to face up to these challenges.
Sure. Well, dialogue is important, but how much of a role do you think the Catholic Church can play in helping overcome all of those challenges?
Well, you know, until recently, many skeptics were saying that with the increased secularization of Europe, that religion would almost cease to play a role in the European Union. Now, that couldn't be further from the truth. As Archbishop Gallagher said today, the world is an increasingly religious place, and Europe too, and the Church can help perhaps to create dialogue, to reinvigorate the continent, to reinvigorate the European Union. And even as Cardinal Marx said, the Church has a big role to play in terms of peace and dialogue with Islam, dialogue with other religions, as well as dialogue within the European countries.
Sure, it's so important. So just to clarify now, the Vatican is in Europe, but technically it's not a member of the EU. So where does that put the Holy See in terms of relations with European institutions and the member states?
Yes, the Vatican is not within the European Union, but the Pope has always taken a keen interest in European issues as the continent now seeks to reinvigorate itself, as the European Union seeks to reinvigorate itself, I should say. This conference that is taking place today and tomorrow is hoping that the Pope will help to encourage dialogue and to help different parties look to the future while still acknowledging and while still taking advantage of the richness of Europeans' past.
Sure, and with so many important issues like immigration and secularization, it's so important that the Church continues to engage. Juliet Lindley, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent, thanks so much.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Coming up, a priest wins a prestigious award. We'll tell you about his mission. The U.S. Embassy to the Holy See posts this picture to Facebook. It shows newly sworn-in Ambassador Callista Gingrich in the Oval Office on Tuesday. The post says, "We are looking forward to her arrival in Rome very soon." Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. Congress narrowly passes a budget framework which they hope leads to a speedy tax reform bill. This comes the same week that we saw a war of words between President Trump and two U.S. senators, one of whom, Arizona Republican Senator Jeff Flake, announced he will not seek re-election. Joining us now is John Schweppe, Communications Director for the American Principles Project, a conservative organization committing to protecting life and religious liberty. So, John, are you surprised by Senator Flake's announcement that he won't seek re-election?
No, not really at all, actually. Okay. When you look at Senator Flake's situation, he was very unpopular in his home state, actually had an approval rating below 20%. He's out there talking about how he's rejecting President Trump, but really what he's doing is rejecting his own voters. He understands that he's not willing to fight on these issues, the issues that his voters are most concerned about, and is more interested in being respected by CNN and MSNBC rather than his own voters.
So then, do you think then, is he kind of a lone wolf then, or do you think other Republicans will not seek re-election this upcoming midterm elections as well?
It's really interesting. Like, the election of Donald Trump wasn't just him running against the Democratic Party. In a lot of ways, he was running against the establishment, do-nothing part of the Republican Party as well. And right now, what he's trying to do is say to the rest of the Senate, hey, we need to get some things done. So there are people who are standing in the way, who are, opposing the president on his agenda. Senator Flake, Senator Corker, who also decided not to run when he looked like he was going to face a primary. So, this is about everyone getting on the same page, recognizing that the president is the leader of the party, and now we need to accomplish an agenda. And what that means is, protecting life and securing religious freedom, passing tax reform that will help working class Americans get ahead. And that's what they have in plan, and I think it's about to get a little bit more busy in Washington.
You mentioned that Senator Corker is also not seeking re-election. It's interesting because President Trump has gone out and said that the Republican Party, he's told reporters, the Republican Party is united. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that? Is there aspects where they are or not? I mean, how do you...
Well, I think, the Republican Party is undergoing a little bit of a reform, and there's going to be a purge of some of these Republicans who aren't on board with the agenda. So now it's about getting conservative people who are in there wanting to get things done and work with the president to accomplish great things.
You mentioned earlier one of those things is tax reform. Noting the political circumstance the way it is, do you think they can pass tax reform? How do you think they'll get it done?
I think they're very aware, Congress is very aware that the public is waiting for them to accomplish something, mm-hmm. and tax reform should be something they can get across the finish line. It's going to be tough, but it's really important because right now I think working class Americans are looking for help, and getting a tax cut, putting extra money in their pockets will be huge for them, and that's something hopefully we'll be able to accomplish, and I think we will.
Absolutely, very vital issue. John Schweppe, American Principles Project, thanks so much for your analysis.
Thanks for having me.
A priest wins an international honor, the Lantos Human Rights Prize. Father Patrick Dubois makes it his mission to uncover human atrocities and give a voice to the victims. Correspondent Jason Calvi reports from Capitol Hill, where the French priest received the honor.
Me, when I go with my team, I say, don't forget the dead people are waiting for you. They wait for us since 70 years.
Father Patrick Dubois uncovers haunting mysteries trapped in time since the Holocaust.
To discover that the shooting of the Jews, gypsies, disabled people, partisans were done in public.
Father Dubois' mission to find mass graves, hidden evidence of genocide.
And every time I find it, I say, we found you, finally we found you.
The priest has interviewed thousands of witnesses, even culprits, to shed light on the shocking loss of life.
He said to me, I learned that anybody can be a killer and anybody can be a victim.
60 Minutes correspondent Laura Logan once profiled the Catholic priest. Now she presents him with the Lantos Human Rights Prize.
He is really engaged in an unbearable mission in many ways. What he's doing is so heartbreaking.
The president of the Lantos Foundation says the work is not done. Religious groups around the world still face persecution and death.
Father Dubois really is warning us, don't go to sleep. Don't put blinders on your eyes and think, well, my life's okay. I'm just going to enjoy my life. We have duties that we have to be prepared to shoulder.
At the Capitol, Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Father Dubois worries about the resurgence of Holocaust deniers, extremists, and people who just don't care about the past. He now has teams in several countries helping him with his mission.
Up next, pro-lifer ousted. Students at an Irish university vote to impeach the student union president after her pro-life move on campus. Plus, chainsaw-wielding nun update, how she's being honored after this video went viral in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma.
Tomorrow, the church honors two of Jesus' apostles, Saints Simon and Jude. St. Jude is known as the patron saint of desperate situations. Both saints are closely associated with each other, as both were martyred and are buried in the same tomb in Rome. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. A federal judge permanently blocks Alabama's pro-life laws, calling them unconstitutional. The laws restricted abortion clinics near schools and banned a second trimester procedure. The decision makes permanent a ruling issued by a judge a year ago. The state is already appealing that decision. 50 years ago today, the United Kingdom legalized abortion. That law allows for a woman to get an abortion if two doctors agree to the pregnancy threatens the mother's life or the physical or mental health of the unborn child.
Well, I think back 50 years now to 1967 when the original Abortion Act went through the House of Commons. And as a schoolboy, I was shocked that only 29 members of the House of Commons have voted against the second reading of that legislation. Legislation that has led to some 8 million abortions in the United Kingdom over the intervening 50 years.
That's British Member of Parliament Lord David Alton of Liverpool. He says the right to life is the most supreme human right. Joining us now via Skype from London is Caroline Farrow, an EWTN contributor. So Caroline, the law calls for restrictions on who can get abortions in the UK, but you say those restrictions are broadly interpreted, so just about anyone who wants an abortion can get one. How exactly does it work?
It was supposed only to be used in very desperate circumstances for women who were facing potentially loss of life or real hardship and real tragedy. And what's happened when the law was passed, the pro-lifers vehemently argued against it, and they said, look, this is going to lead to abortion on demand. And they were heckled at and jeered and told, no, that will never happen. 50 years later, we effectively have abortion on demand. So one of the rules is that two doctors are supposed to sign off on your abortion because it's deemed to be so very grave and so serious. A couple of years ago, mainstream UK British newspapers did an investigation, and they discovered that basically doctors were pre-signing batches of abortion forms without ever having seen the patients at all. And the law is widely being flouted.
The Catholic bishops of England, Wales, and Scotland issued a rare joint statement on the anniversary of the Abortion Act. I want to read part of what it has to say. They say this anniversary provides an opportunity to lament the loss of life due to abortion and seek a change of minds and hearts about the good of the child in the womb and the care of the mothers who are pregnant. What do you think the Catholic Church is doing to raise awareness about the issue?
Well, the Catholic Church is, they have a day for life. They're constantly, I think the pressure is on for priests to try and preach about this a little bit more. They're trying to fund, the pro-life movement and just restate the teaching. I mean, what was unprecedented was that this was a joint statement from the Scottish Bishops' Conference and the Bishops' Conference of England and Wales. Now, that's very rare for them to come together and to produce a very strong joint statement. But I think as well, the Catholic Church in the UK is quite wary of getting involved in the pro-life movement because unfortunately, there is a tendency to see it as solely a religious issue.
So many important issues to talk about and so important that the Church continues to stay engaged. Caroline Farrow, an EWTN contributor and Catholic journalist in the UK, thanks so much.
Thank you.
In the Republic of Ireland, students at University College Dublin vote to impeach its pro-life student union president. The Independent reports 69% of the students voted to remove Katie Askoff. Calls to oust her from the position came after she removed information on abortion services from a student handbook. In response to the removal, Askoff says, "This is a sad day for me." Finally tonight, the nun who cut up a tree with a chainsaw in the wake of Hurricane Irma has inspired a beer company to brew up something special. This video captured by Miami-Dade Police Office went viral last month. Sister Margaret cut up a tree that had fallen from Hurricane Irma. Due South Brewing Company has now released None with a Chainsaw beer. Brewers say it brings a bright scent of tropical fruit and piney hops. It's now available throughout the Tampa Bay, Florida area. And by the way, Sister Margaret Ann said she had cut down the tree because it was blocking a road and creating a dangerous situation for drivers. No word from the sister on how she feels about a beer being named after her. And that's going to wrap up our newscast for tonight and for this week. And we thank you for watching. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll be back Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.